We're bringing you the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. Here are some of the stories we're watching this Wednesday, April 17. The yellow alert is up again over Luzon and the Visayas grid following forced outages of several power plants. The yellow alert status will start at 1 p.m. or started at 1 p.m. and will last until 11 p.m. in Luzon and from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the Visayas. Yellow alert means power reserves are insufficient to meet the transmission grid's contingency requirements, so expect some brownouts, possible brownouts. A survey showed the Department of Education was the most trusted agency in the first quarter of 2024. In OCTA Research's latest survey, DepEd earned an 82% trust rating and an 84% performance rating. And 2 U.S. senators have filed a bill that would allow foreign military financing grant to the Philippines under the proposed Philippines Enhanced Resilience Act of 2024. The Philippines will receive $500 million each fiscal year from 2025 to 2029. This is equivalent to $2.5 billion in U.S. security assistance over 5 years. Now joining us again on the Storycon are Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star. Ami?
Hi, happy Wednesday, Patrick.
Happy Wednesday, Ami. Hump day, as they say. Ami, can you tell us what's possibly the banner story of the Philippine Star for tomorrow?
Hot day talaga, and it's going to get hotter according to Pag-asa. Sobrang init. May is going to be hotter according to Pag-asa. And if it's any consolation to Filipinos, hindi lang naman tayo nag-iisa. In Myanmar, there's a story. Si Aung San Suu Kyi, opposition leader, she was moved to house arrest dahil daw sa sobrang init sa Myanmar.
Ganun ha? Ito
And
also,
another story, related pa rin dyan sa climate change. Freak weather in Dubai. 1.5 years worth daw of rain. Makikita niyo yung video, talaga terrible. It looks like a sandstorm. Pero binaha yung Dubai airport at pati yung mga kalye. And it's significant for us because alam naman natin sa Dubai, the airport is almost, I think, around 70%. Mga Filipinos ang nagtatrabaho dyan.
Right.
So it's a matter of concern for our people.
You know, Ami, earlier today, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Smartmatic.
Yes.
Well, it ruled against the disqualification of Smartmatic by COMELEC. So it is now again free to join the bidding for the elections, automated elections. Is this going to be part of your page one?
Yes, it will be on page 1. Although medyo malabo yung sa Supreme Court ruling because sinabi nila the ruling, although yun na nga na hindi daw pabor sa Smartmatic, it doesn't disqualify the award to Miro, the South Korean company. So we're still waiting at this point for the reaction of the COMELEC. Kasi dinidepensahan nila yan eh.
Yeah, because
we're waiting for the final answer from, unless na interviewin kung ma-interview sana natin ngayon.
Okay, so they are not been disqualified, but Smartmatic still has to bid. They still have to bid for the automated election. So this time it will be there will be competition with this new bidder, right? So that's the decision of the Supreme Court basically na hindi pwede i-disqualify ang Smartmatic ng ganun-ganun lang. Okay, let them compete, let them play, let them participate. Yun.
Medyo we're running out of time na, no? Malapit na yung 1 year na lang, 1 year na lang election. They have to, if they're going to use a different system, they have to put it through the paces, the testingin pa yan, di ba? Kaya iniintay natin kung anong sasabihin ng COMELEC.
But one thing about the COMELEC bureaucracy, Ami, we've seen so many last-minute undertakings by the COMELEC. So far, kinakaya. Parang ganun, ano?
Sa bagay, sanay sila. And it's not as if unexpected yung final ng Smartmatic. Of course, everyone was expecting a little challenge.
Okay, we also have
silang service provider for the COMELEC.
Okay, we also have with us right now our de facto One News political pundit na late lang ng konti dahil na traffic.
Grabe.
Na traffic dyan sa
Yes.
EDSA. Not a big surprise, no? Na traffic at EDSA. Even at 4 p.m., ma'am, wala pa talagang technically rush hour pero traffic na.
Yes, grabe.
So
Hi,
what's
Ronald.
your take on Smartmatic? How come Smartmatic has become very controversial since day one, since the
Yeah.
first automated elections?
Yes, sabi nga ni Ami, ang problema rito, yung delay. Paano, practically, 1 year na lang. Tapos, syempre, hindi naman yan dapat nakahanda sa election itself. Dapat nakahanda yan months before the election. Di ba? Dahil i-deploy na yung mga bagong machines eh. So, lahat yan ipoproduce eh. Halimbawa, kung hindi manalo ang Smartmatic,
Miro.
sa bidding, ay magpo-produce pa sila ng mga bagong mga makina. No? At i-deploy pa nila. So, medyo very
Yes.
tight na ito. Delikado na itong of course, right ng Supreme Court yan, no?
Okay.
Na bigyan ng ganong klaseng leeway ang Smartmatic.
Yun lang, Ronald. Ano aanihin natin ng automated elections kung walang kuryente? So right now, we're bringing in
Yes.
the spokesman of the National Grid Corporation, spokesperson Cynthia Alabanza, para kamustahin naman po ang lagay ng ating kuryente, ang ating supply. I think yesterday you had a lot of issues regarding the
Yes.
NGCP,
Yes.
but maybe now spokesperson attorney Cynthia Alabanza might be able to answer it.
Yeah.
Ma'am Spokes, kamusta po ang kuryente natin?
Yes, good afternoon to
Hi,
everyone. Actually, nag-improve yung condition ng sistema both in the Luzon and in the Visayas grid for today. Also, primarily because there were several plants that went back online, and also nakita natin there's a slightly lower demand for today compared to yesterday. But yes, we are still on yellow alert.
Okay. But attorney, alam naman natin, National Grid Corporation provides the delivery system, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So it will still depend on the available supply.
That's absolutely correct, which is why we actually release this information because we see the status of the supply and the demand, but we always have to explain that NGCP doesn't have control over the operations of the power plant,
Okay.
which supply the distribution utilities and the cooperatives.
Okay.
Cynthia, pwedeng ipaliwanag muna bakit nagkaroon ng outage yung 19 power plants at yung 3 ay nagkaroon ng scale down na services. So anong main reason dun sa outage? At nagkaroon ng red at yellow alert?
Klaruhin ko lang po na yung mga 19 power plants in Luzon na naka-unplanned maintenance shutdown, hindi naman po nangyari yan ng sabay-sabayan. No? So, tinitiran ko po yung datos. Merong ibang, I think there were 5 power plants na 2023 pa nag-maintenance shutdown. Hanggang ngayon hindi pa nakababalik. But these are all smaller plants. I think the biggest impact really happened in the last couple of days, within the last week or so, where you saw several larger power plants, thermal power plants, na nawala sa sistema. And this contributed talaga around 1,000 plus megawatts, comprised of 5 power plants or so, na nawala sa grid. So yun ang malaking impact.
Pero di ba dapat may ancillary... Di ba dapat may ancillary services yung NGCP para mapigilan yung ganyang klaseng mga problema?
Yeah, the ancillary services, sir, these are, this is electricity that NGCP procures from the same pool of suppliers that are meant to balance po frequency and voltage. So, in a period of deficiency, pag kulang na po talaga yung supply ng kuryente, yung mga kontrata po natin, yung mga power plants, tumatakbo na po yan. In fact po, yung definition ng yellow and red alert, nakapin po yan sa level ng ancillary reserves that are available to the grid. Pag yellow, hindi na po sapat to meet the dispatchable reserve. Pag red, wala na rin po pati regulating. But again, we are just buyers also of electricity for ancillary services. So if these plants go offline, we really have nowhere to get these services from.
Orny, it's not the first time that NGCP encountered this unplanned maintenance shutdowns. And the last time, hiningi nyo nga na sana mag-improve yung coordination sa mga ganyan para nga maiwasan tong mga ganitong pangyayari. Anong progress nun? Your suggestion to improve the coordination? Maging national,
Actually,
parang whole of nation ka mo. I remember yun yung suggestion ninyo eh.
No, actually, Ami, you're absolutely correct. This is not the first time this has happened. In the
Yes.
last 5, 6, 7 years or so, every year, NGCP has to explain why there is a deficiency in supply. But again, we emphasize now we're a transmission service provider and we really just depend on the available capacity from the power plant. When the power plants go offline, we really have no control over them. I think in terms of coordination, I'm not sure if we're talking about the Panay outages. Because I think in that case, kaya nagkaroon ng power outages doon kasi hindi naka-fine-tune yung protection system ng planta doon sa sistema ng NGCP. And I think that one's been resolved. But even then, in Panay, there is also a dire need for additional baseload plants within the island itself. And, you know, we've always advocated that the islands, especially the Visayas, should not rely on interconnection for its own requirement. Dapat each island should be sufficient in itself. Then the interconnection is just to facilitate better pricing for the cooperatives as well as for contingency when needed.
Okay, you mentioned that if the supply is short, that's clearly not the NGCP's problem. But you mentioned na rin, attorney, yung interconnection, okay? Because it has been argued in the past na that's part of the commitment of NGCP is to improve the grid. And it's been argued, or it has been pointed out, there's hardly any improvement on the grid or additional lines for the delivery of electricity, whether it's there or not, that the NGCP has undertaken. So, what's your response to this, attorney?
Well, dagdag lang doon sa sinabi ni Patrick, no? Di ba may several hearings this past 2 years sa Senate? At yun yung criticism ng Senate na yung earnings ng grid, a certain percentage, ay hindi nagagamit doon sa pag-improve ng infrastructure, halimbawa storage. No? So anong status na ngayon nung ganong klaseng criticism ng Senate? Baka mapatawag na naman kayo sa isang Senate hearing.
Thank you for those questions, Pono, because actually the projects that we have been criticized for not finishing are actually all energized already. Last year, we energized the 500 kilovolt backbone from Hermosa to San Jose here in Luzon. There's still a little problem with the second circuit, but the full capacity for what it was intended is already there. So wala na tayong tinatawag na projection. Lahat ng power plants that are in Luzon are able to be dispatched to where they're needed. We also recently energized last January 26 the Mindanao Visayas interconnection line. So again, all the capacities that are extra in Mindanao are now are capable of being delivered to Visayas, and then from the Visayas, because of our existing Luzon Visayas interconnection, nadadala na rin sa Luzon and vice versa. And most recently, last Monday, April 8th, we inaugurated in the presence of President Marcos, yung Cebu Negros Panay. These are all big ticket projects that, you know, I have to bring this up because Mr. Henry C. Jr., our Vice Chairman, it's his gripe eh. So, tatlong proyekto yan, but our recovery for those projects is less than 1% because of regulatory lag. So, in terms of improving the grid, we've increased more than 320 billion over the last 15 years. Pero yung regulatory lag, medyo na naiipit rin kami dyan kasi we aren't allowed to recover. And on the last point, sir, on the storage, I just like to point it out din po, na the current DOE policy was recently revised. Dati po kasi since kami pinapayagan mag-invest in storage. Now, that was, I think, revised last year or thereabouts. Now, we're allowed now to invest in storage, but only as a last resort. The priority for storage systems is still those for the generating investors. So that is something that is not being prioritized in terms of the grid. Our position on that is storage is supposed to be it's technology. It's not it's neither generation, transmission, or distribution. It will take on the nature of the sector that invests in it. So kung kami mag-invest, that should be transmission. But again, that is what it is. Those are the policies that are in place.
Okay, Attorney, nabanggit mo yung inauguration of a Cebu Negros Panay grid or line or something like that. Does this mean, Attorney, that the outages that we saw in Panay Island won't be repeated anytime soon?
Again, no, like kanina yung nabanggit.
As far as it can be traced to the NGCP, no? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Attorney.
Sinisingil po sa amin yung proyekto, and it was really being pinpointed as the solution to the power interruptions. But as you can see, all our projects have been our big ticket projects. Of course, we always have projects in the pipeline. Our big ticket projects are now energized. Yes, we still see the red alerts and yellow alerts in the Mindanao grid, the Visayas and the Luzon grid. In Mindanao, dahil maraming pumasok na planta over the last 10 years or so, wala tayong nakikitang problem. So I think it's about time that we really focus on the supply side. The NGCP has long been advocating a more holistic approach to energy planning. And it can't just be transmission kasi tagapag-deliver lang po kami. I think the President mentioned it in Bacolod. I heard him say in an Amish interview that, it's a good thing that the transmission is ready, but if there is no supply to transmit, you'll still see the problem crop up. And I think this is exactly what's happening the last 2 days, because I think we're going to be, right now, projection natin is yellow alert for the Luzon grid until the end of the week, and for the Visayas, the yellow alert will persist till next week. And that's assuming, of course, na walang additional plants na bumagsak.
Okay.
Four days ago, 4 days bago nung outage, sabi ng Department of Energy, there is no power crisis. Parang di ba may contradiction? No? Yung sinabi ni Secretary Popo Lotila, that was just 4 days before the outage.
I don't really want to contradict the Secretary of Energy, but on our part in GCP, we really never make assurances because we have seen over the past several years that no matter how well laid the plans are, when somebody goes out of the off plan,
Yes.
you can see that there will be an impact. Kasi I think the basis of these statements for yung tinatawag natin base case, kasi every year, we do submit, NGCP submits to the Department of Energy the grid operating and maintenance plan after we consult the generators. Kasi the point of that is we tell the generators, this is the projected demand for the year, huwag kayo magkumpulan in one step, especially in those times na mataas ang demand, para hindi natin maramdaman yung pagkawala ng capacity nila when they're on shutdown. However, it's really the unplanned maintenance shutdown that have an impact on the supply and demand balance. Yesterday, it was very illustrative of that. We had, I think, almost 24 power plants that were offline or at diminished capacity. 19 of those 24 were on unplanned maintenance shutdown. Tapos in terms of capacity, only 700 was planned, 1,800, the bulk, was unplanned. So I think the 1,800, 1,200 was just 4 or 5 planned.
Okay.
Attorney, at this point, apart from unplanned maintenance shutdowns and yung mga problema nga with the generators, what are the biggest hindrances to NGCP's expansion plans, yung day-to-day operations as well?
In terms of expansion plans, it's always really been a right-of-way and permitting. I want to give a shout-out to the Department of Interior and Local Government. Secretary Abalos has been such a great help over the last couple of years, especially in pushing the Base 3 project. But, we really need political will on the side of government to help push our permits. Kasi minsan, by experience, magsasubmit kami ng requirements for a permit, and then after we submit it, mga manak. So, we're really working on hoping that these permits And the timeline, kasi meron lang tayong Executive Order 30, which mandates a 30-day processing period for
Yes.
national infrastructure projects that energy infrastructure projects that are of national significance. Pero hindi parati siyang nasusunod. In terms of right-of-way, it's also very difficult because sometimes, especially if your landowner is influential, then they will pressure us to do a reroute. And rerouting is not as simple as just picking out pegs from a pegboard and transferring it to another hole. Minsan, pag nag-reroute ka, yung configuration ng tore, magbabago yung kung saan siya nakaharap. So it's not that easy to also reroute. So those are the things that we really have challenges. And of course, I just have to mention this. In particular, for those 3 projects that I mentioned, nagkaroon kami ng 3 PRO from the Supreme Court. Yung Hermosa San Jose that I mentioned na na-energize namin last year, yung second circuit, kamakailan lang na-lift yung PRO. So almost 1 year na tenga yung second circuit because of a temporary restraining order. So those things really are things we cannot control, and we really ask for the support of the government.
Okay, last question from Ronald.
Yeah, attorney, yung tanong ko ay related sa solar power. Dahil hindi na naman ganun kakonte yung ating mga solar power ngayon, no? At lalo na ngayon, summer na, dapat meron tayong excess power kesa deficit. So, anong nangyayari dito sa ating solar power?
Well, yung solar power po, that's correct, no? It's good pag mainit ang araw. Ang problema lang po talaga, ang challenge, I don't want to say problem, the challenge with the solar farms is that they're intermittent, meaning if there's there's cloud cover, then it's as if you lost a plant to an unplanned maintenance shutdown. And in order to maintain the integrity and the quality of the power that comes from the solar plant, we need standby power to replace it immediately. So that's one challenge with solar farms. Plus, in certain areas that are not so developed, the peak still is at night. So sa gabi, unless may kakabit na battery storage yung solar plant, wala na rin siyang harvest.
Okay.
So, which is the dynamic now between Visayas and Mindanao, because we have a lot of solar plants in Negros, and the peak in Luzon is at 2 p.m. So during the daytime, Visayas exports power from the solar to Luzon, where you have a lot of industrialized areas. And then at night, baliktad naman. It's Luzon that exports power to the Visayas, where many islands are still not as industrialized. So their peak requirement is at 7 p.m. in the evening.
Okay, Attorney Cynthia Alabanza, maraming salamat po sa oras nyo.
Yes, thank you very
Attorney.
much. And good
Salamat.
afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, that was Attorney Cynthia Alabanza, spokesperson of the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Alam mo, ang problema talaga kulang sa kuryente. I think madali sisihin yung Meralco or yung NGCP, but really, they just deliver the power. If there's no
Yes.
power being generated by the plants, and I think that's a bigger problem.
Yes, pero yung
There's-
criticism kasi ng Senate, nung pinatawag nila yung NGCP last year, ay
Right.
meron dapat ginagamit yung NGCP
Right.
sa kanilang
Oo.
kita para i-upgrade yung
develop
storage,
yung
yung transmission, etc. At ang criticism ng Senate ay bakit hindi nagagamit yung required na percentage na yon. Kaya tinreten nga ng Senate yung franchise nila.
And they said
Last year.
meron daw,
Yeah,
ginagawa na
yeah,
rin nila.
yeah.
Pero let's not even go to to the issue of Chinese controller
Iba pa
ownership.
yun, no?
Ibang issue pa yan.
Na-raise din yun sa Senate last
mahabang
year.
usapan pa yan. Oo.
Na-raise din yun last year. Dahil 40% ang hawak ng China, pero
And the
parang
rest?
sila yung nagpapatakbo.
Yun.
Not the 60% na owned ng mga Pilipino.
Filipino.
So,
Kaya sinabi ng NGCP, wala daw involvement sa management nila, yung Chinese component nila.
Yun.
Sinabi din sila Cynthia Alabanza din na nagsabi nun. And they've been trying to upgrade nga, kapareho na sinabi niya ngayon. Kaya lang ganyan nga, may red tape, may katakot-takot na permit, tapos pupunta sa korte kapag nakuha na nila. Kaya ayan, ganyan kabagal tayo.
Actually,
I guess it's a problem with all our major infrastructure.
Actually, Ami, nung presidency ni Pinoy, naging national security issue yan eh. Dahil mismo yung
Yes.
mga instructions sa NGCP are all written in Mandarin. No? Kaya nag-require yung gobyerno na dapat isulat man lang yan sa English or Filipino.
Was it ever contemplated by the Aquino administration to revoke or take back that ano?
Well, kinonsider yun, pero may merong deal eh. So ang ginawa naman lang nila ay parang soft threat na yung mga Chinese na nagpapatakbo nung NGCP.
Wala ka namang kinalaman doon sa software.
Wala naman, wala. Sabi nila na baka i-revoke yung visa, no? Kung hindi bibigyan ng greater participation yung mga Pinoy sa pagpapatakbo, no? Alam
So
ko
may
na,
greater participation na ngayon.
hindi ko
Kasi
sure.
yun naman ang sinasabi ng NGCP. Hindi naman kami binawalan na makipag-partner sa Chinese.
Hindi ko sure. Hindi
The
ko sure.
Filipino partners in NGCP include the SM Group, ba? Yung group ng ano?
Yes.
Well, yes,
The
pero
The C family.
yun nga yung hearing last year eh. Dahil parang secret daw yung mga may-ari ng 60%. Yun yung ni-raise ng Senate eh. Sino ba yung mga 60% ng mga Pilipino? No, dahil parang hindi nire-release eh.
Okay, I said that di na muna natin papasukan yung national
Yes,
security issue ng NGCP dahil ang gusto lang naman ng mga Pilipino ngayon, kuryente.
Yes, yes,
Lalo na sa
yes.
init ito.
Kuryente.
Yes, yes.
Okay, you're watching Storycon on One News. We'll take a quick break, but we will be right back. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group. We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Patrick Paez with Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and Ronald, Llamas, our political pundit on hand. Thank you for always being around, no? For helping us clarify the most complicated political stories developing in this nation. Okay, let's circle back to one of our top stories, the latest OCTA survey. On the phone now is Professor Guido David, OCTA Research Fellow. Professor David, we see from your latest first quarter performance survey of government agencies that DepEd scores quite high. It's number one at 82% trust rating, followed by the DSWD at 79% trust rating. I have a question regarding that, but first of all, Professor David, maybe you can tell us more about this survey.
Yes, good afternoon, Patrick, and Andy and Ronald. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi, Dr.
Good afternoon sa viewers and listeners natin. And just to describe yung OCTA survey, this is one of our first results released from our first quarter Tugon ng Masa 2024 survey, conducted March 11 to 14, 2024, with 1,200 respondents face-to-face nationwide.
Okay. Ako na mauna. Professor David, was this performance survey conducted at the same time as the performance survey for the President and Vice President and other top government officials? Was it done at the same time?
Well, the survey is done quarterly from March 11 to 14. So yes, it's the same survey. Although hindi pa namin na-release yung ibang results that you have mentioned. I think yung na-release pa lang namin so far the results yung sa senatorial race and I think one other. Sorry, I forgot what that one.
I understand, Professor David, that there was a survey which showed that the president's performance rating dropped by a dramatic 16%.
Yeah.
So how do you account na bumagsak, even the vice president bumagsak, although single digit lang naman, bumagsak yung mga performance ratings nila, pero at the same time, medyo mataas itong performance rating ng mga agencies of government.
Well, I can confirm about the performance rating drop of the president. From my understanding, hindi pa na-release namin itong result.
Okay.
What I remember what we actually released was the political preference, like 31% sided with the administration, 20% sided with the Duterte. I think that was the release result. Yes. Ngayon, there could be a drop. What we're seeing here is it's not necessarily related to the performance of the individual.
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, it's also an injustice to the entire Department of Education to say that the performance is attributed to just their leader. Yes, because you have thousands of government employees working in the Department of Education, and same thing with the chair, Commission on Higher Education, the DW. Age, UH. Yes, I believe some people, when they answer these questions, they look at the leader, but it's not necessarily correlated. Because if we look at the Commission on Higher Education, he's not as well aware. People are not as well aware of Chairman Prospero de Vera as compared to, let's say, people who are aware of the Vice President, who's also the head of the Department of Education.
Okay.
Professor, yun nga yung i-follow up ko sa question ni Patrick Yung crafting nyo ng question and the conduct of the survey, would you know kung aware yung mga tao kung sino yung head ng agency? Kasi ang iniisip din namin, pag tinanong nyo yung agency, you talk about DepEd, people will think about the teacher. Are they aware na si Sara Duterte ang head nun? Halimbawa, DSWD, how many people are aware na Secretary of DSWD sa Gatchalian? Iniisip nila yung nagbibigay ng ayuda Di ba? Or am I wrong? Kasi kung DOH, if you will look at the best performing agencies, mga frontline yan eh. Mga nagde-deliver ng aid, Department of Health.
Yeah.
Yun ang nakikita nila, yung mga doktor, yung mga teacher, sa kayong mga social welfare workers. Am I correct? Or yung crafting nyo ng survey and the question say, actually, merong awareness yung mga tao kung sino yung namumuno ng ahensya?
Actually, that's a good question to ask, Ami. Maybe I could pitch that to Professor Ranjit for the next quarter survey. If we should ask about yung people are aware of the head of the agency. That's a good question. But the way I see it, correct yung sabi ng Ami na the frontline agencies are the ones who are best performing. In fact, I think for the past 2 years, they're seeing the same results. Nagsashuffle na sila. But the top 5 are always the educational industries like yung DepEd and SHED. And then Department of Health is almost always in the top 5. Same thing rin with the DSW, which gives the ayuda. So, in a way, I see that as medyo independent siya of the head of the agency. Kasi sila pa rin naman yung top 5 agencies regardless of who the head is. I mean, I can remember as far back as 2021 who were the top 5 agencies kunyari, or before they changed the ano. But
kasi i-spin din yan ng mga hindi ba? Well, wag na natin sabihin i-spin, pero yan ang sasabihin ng mga head of agency eh. Tingnan nyo, magaling yung performance ko. Yung agency ko yon. Would that be a valid claim?
Well, they can be proud of it because it's better if their agency is performing rather than underperforming. And they can. I'm sure part of it is attributed to the leadership, but it's only a small part. We don't want to do injustice with DOH. There are numerous doctors and government employees serving under the DOH. I personally know some other secretaries, assistant secretaries. They work hard, and if the rating of the agency is only just because of the head of the agency, but injustice din naman yan sa people working under the head of the agency.
Professor David, if the president's rating did drop, as you suggest earlier, why didn't the relatively seemingly high performance rating or trust ratings of the agencies, why were they unable to shore up the president's performance rating? We understand that yung agency head maybe hindi alam ng tao, pero shouldn't all of these agencies' performance parang be identified with the administration?
Exactly, Doctor, dagdag doon sa tanong ni Patrick, without belaboring the point, pwedeng maunawaan natin kung medyo hindi ganun kalaki yung agwat, pero dito kasi ang laki, bahagi rin ng survey nyo, yung bilanggit mo nga, 30%, 31% for the President, for the Marcos, 20% for the Duterte, tapos in all other surveys na hindi naman nalalayo sa resulta ng OCTA, ganun din dramatic yung pagbaba. Pero pag pinag-usapan kasi yung mga department, ang head ng lahat niyan ay yung presidente.
Right.
So ano yung explanation sa napakalaking
discrepancy,
gap? Oo. Yun yung gusto namin maunawaan
Sure. I can explain that. And before I explain that, I will first neither confirm na bumaba yung trust and approval ng top government officials. We'll wait for the official release.
Okay.
But I am confirming na other survey firms have shown a decrease in the trust and approval of the president and the vice president. So, that's probably what we may expect from our results. Although hindi pa nga baka magalit sa Professor Ranjit. Hindi pa naman na officially na-release yan, so I can't really talk about it. But, sige, valid yung question nyo, bakit mataas pa rin yung DOH and yung DepEd, yung Commission on Higher Education. But, on the other hand, na-mention lang natin yung top performing agencies, pero there are some agencies that have performance and trust na nasa 37%. So
Okay.
it should be nagbabalance out now. There are some good performing agencies and there are some bad performing agencies.
Can you mention some of those? Can you mention some of those bad performing agencies, Professor David? Maybe that could provide us a clue.
I will not say bad performing. Let's say they're not performing as well.
30%. Okay. Yung nasa 30%.
I don't want to be quoted, but okay. I will just say that they're not performing as well. Some of these agencies, actually, nasa press release yan, if I can talk about them.
Okay.
It's some that come to mind are some agencies na hindi pa mataas yung awareness, like Department of Migrant Workers.
Okay.
Hindi ganun mataas yung awareness nila. One is DPM, and I'm not sure why. I can't really explain. And also DTI din. Possibly because may mga complaints about DTI. I'm just speculating it's possible. So there are some agencies who are not performing as well. And so it's to be the people can identify or can separate these agencies from the national government performance. And totoo naman. I mean, when we're talking about DepEd and CHED, I guess people are satisfied with scholarships na binibigay nila, and and that's what they see. DSWD, they're satisfied with the mga ayuda na nakukuha nila, which maybe the health services na nabibigay nila sa mga tao. So these are frontline services. But some other agencies that are not rated as high, maybe there are some reason or another that they're getting the ratings that they're getting from the people.
Okay, Ronald?
Professor, is there a possibility also na mababa nga yung awareness ng nature ng trabaho ng agency? Because like you said, yung Department of Migrant Workers, hindi pa sa kilala. Yung DBM especially, maraming tao hindi nakakaintindi about the budget process at will probably not understand if it's performing well or not. Is that also a possibility na medyo yung bang yung sampling ba nyo across incomes, okay naman yung representation niya?
And that's exactly why I don't want to call them bad performing.
Okay.
Because they're not necessarily bad performing. Maybe they're not just as
top of
people
mind.
are just not as well aware.
Yes.
Wala sila sa top of mind. I mean, there's some agencies, ako mismo, I hardly see them or interact with any media coverage from them. Unlike yung mga agencies na, or institutions that people hear about often, like the DOH or GSWD. So that's why it's not fair to compare them. It's like comparing apples to oranges. Some are people are aware of them, and some people are not as aware of them.
But Professor, is low public awareness of these agencies enough to bring down the performance rating of the president? If it's a question of low public awareness lang?
Well, it could be a combination of low public awareness for some agencies and maybe not performing as well.
I guess my question...
Yeah.
I guess my question, Professor David, I know you have yet to release the actual numbers on the president's performance rating. I guess my question is, are there other factors, other reasons? Is it a question of hot issues where, where maybe yung appreciation of public is not satisfactory or good? Are there other issues involved?
Okay, without preempting our release for the results, but let's say looking at the other results from other survey companies, there's a decrease in the performance rating of the president. I think we could attribute this to some of their urgent concerns, and some of their urgent concerns include rising prices of goods and basic services. So that is a factor, definitely, that affects the how the president is rated by the general public. Another is, and this is more speculation, but I think the views that the administration has with certain parties, I think it affects negatively on all parties involved. That's just my speculation.
Okay, this is
Doc Guido, David, is
Yeah,
it safe
yeah.
to presume that this isn't the first time you made such a survey? If yes, what's the major difference from your previous survey using the same framework? Meron bang significant difference? Or is it still the same, relatively?
We're talking about yung trust and performance ng
Yes.
Right.
ng government aid
Yes.
institutions, right? Yes.
May ginawa ba kayo nito
we've
a
done-
year ago, 2 years ago? At anong difference? Is it still
I guess are the numbers the same? Kumbaga, this is a default number na when you ask people about the trust rating for government agencies, talaga nasa 80s ang DepEd or that.
or is there a major difference?
There's no major difference. We ask this question every quarter. So this is one of the probes that we consistently ask because we are monitoring the performance of these agencies. And as I mentioned kanina, the top 5 actually is more or less consistent over the past 2 years. Pero nagsha-shuffle na sila. So I would say these are minor differences. There was a quarter last year na Shed was the highest performing. I know that because the chairman, Prosper Rivera, he actually made a post that acknowledged that. There was also a quarter na DSWD was the highest performing. I would also know that because the Secretary Gatchalian actually made also a post about that. So there's some minor changes, but the top 5, we've seen some consistency in them. So let's change the funding numbers. Like before, the highest was maybe 75% or something like that. And ngayon, the highest is 82%. So there's some changes, but again, qualitatively, I think the trend is that the same 5 agencies are the same one consistently rating in the top 5.
Okay, Professor Guido, David.
Professor, mukhang okay na ba? Sige.
Yeah, okay.
Okay na.
Okay, that's all the time we have for now. Unfortunately, Ami. No,
Okay.
Professor Guido David
Yeah.
of OCTA Research, thank you so much for your time.
Salamat, Doctor.
Thank you,
so much.
Professor.
Patrick and Ronald. Have a good afternoon.
Okay, Ami, thank you also for joining the Storycon today. Philippine Star Editor-in-Chief Ami Pamintuan and our resident or de facto political pundit Ronald Llamas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick.
Join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.